I'm like, this woman is in pain. She's in this room by herself, like just like literally like shaking out of the pain. I go in, talk with her. She tells me her story, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds abnormal. So I go and I order more pain medication for her. I go back to my senior, and I'm like, we need to take this woman for an exam under anesthesia because her exam is abnormal. Like, we need to see what's going on. This woman was dead 8 months later from cervical cancer.
Oh, 8 months. Confident, maybe you found your voice like Dr. Byrd, or you're very direct like Dr. Holsey, or you're very, I'm becoming, or I've come, and I'm going to say what I need to say, like, Dr. Kiki or Dr. Renee, but that's you, right? But have you guys ever been in a situation, have you ladies ever been in a situation where you are observing whether a prejudiced behavior towards like a particular family or patient, and that you had to either advocate for that person or you were in a position to do so?
Yeah, I have a specific example. So I have two examples. One quickly, I was taking care of a gentleman who came in because he needed dialysis, and unfortunately he missed outpatient dialysis. And he told me like that he was a Black male, and he was like, look, these people not treating me right. He listed very specific racist comments that was made to him by a white male nurse. Like, I don't remember the details, but at the time he was extremely detailed. And so I ended up like, he didn't know what to do. He just knew I was Black and said, and his doctor, maybe I could do something. So I ultimately reported that incident, filed a report against that nurse, like an official report on the patient's behalf. Because, sometimes we have to look out for each other, and, sometimes you just don't know what to do. Another specific example, I'm taking care of a Black male teenager, and how do I say this? Sometimes we have very well-meaning parents, but they just are busy working, don't have a lot of education, and struggle to navigate the medical system. And a lot of times, like this particular patient's mom, she just goes street on everybody. She be cussing people out, just, y'all not treating my son right, da 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 da. I have to just talk to her and say, look, I say, look, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what's going on, but the way you're going about this is not going to benefit your son. And I still take care of him. I had to constantly advocate for him and this family, because people just think like, oh, this woman ratchet, she probably on drugs, she in the street, da 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 da. And I'm like, no, this child is actually sick. She has concerns just like the white suburban mom or the highly educated family. It's just that she just expressed her concerns differently than what you experienced. She's not articulate. She might use a lot of profanity or use, talk street, so to speak. And it's like really learning how to just take what people are saying to you and really try to get how can I serve you? How can I help you? And how can I advocate for you? And that's the approach that I try to take with quite a few of my families.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I've had similar situations with Dr. Byrd, with the patients, and it's like trying to advocate for them and getting people to understand the delivery is just different, but the message is the same. And they need the same amount of handhold and love and care. They probably need a little bit more because they're nervous. She's probably used to people slam the door in her face or saying she's a frequent flyer or saying she's a drug seeker. I've had the patients with the drug seeking sickle cell. That's that's usually painful. I don't have it, but I know people that do, family, friends. It's not simple. My biggest advocacy a lot of times is with cultural competency and food, and understanding that you cannot, I'm sorry, you cannot tell a Jamaican, don't eat rice, don't eat dumpling, you're literally telling them to cut off their foot, their leg, their arm, something. That is a staple, that is huge. But what you can tell them to do is, your husband plate doesn't have to be big. You know, let's portion control. Not the 5 scoops of rice today, just 1 or 2. Not, you know, do the 5 scoops of veggies, maybe 2 scoops of the meat, and 1 scoop of the rice. Like, you know, you have to break it down to them and let them know. But when you're going in there and just tell them, when you're diabetic, oh, just stop. It is not just stop. Like, you have to understand, people, that's all they know. This is what they grew up with. And, you know, in these countries, they're not this big because they walk a lot. So then you also got to tell them, walk like you were at home. I got used to saying, if it ain't for you, it ain't for me. So I would say, is there steps in your house? Look, you got the elliptical. If there's a table, look, you got the track. Run around the table 50 times. If you got a 5-pound bag of flour, look, you got weights. If you got a gallon of water, you got weight. You know, trying to advocate for them and show them different ways of going to the gym without going to the gym, and creating a plan for them, and like literally sitting down and drawing it out, writing it out, and advocating for them on that behalf, or talking to a colleague and just be like, that's not going to work. That's just not going to work. Like, I listened to you, and I'm sorry for interjecting in the room, but I'm not sorry, because this patient needed a lot more. And they weren't going to get it with what you, it was literally like you see the fog in their eyes, and like a cloud is over their face, and they're just like, this doctor, I got to change them. Like, they're not listening anymore. You know, and it's disheartening, because at the end of the day, we all know carbs are needed. You know, sugar is needed. The brain relies on sugar, but we're telling people not to do things because of this perception that Black people don't want to learn. They don't want to eat right. They don't care to know what the information is. They don't have the ability to comprehend. And that's not the truth. It's just that we have to give them the chance and the opportunity. And just because somebody talks in slang doesn't mean they're not educated. That just means they know their environment, they adapted to it very well, but they can be educated at the same time, and you have to give them a chance. And so my advocacy was usually trying to get people to just give the education that patients need, and give them the opportunity to be seen and heard, and just not just dismiss them just because of, you know, I get it, they yelled at you, but did you ask them why? Did you stop to say why? Because you sure do that with the white people. Or when they're yelling, you say, sorry, ma'am, sorry, sir. I don't see you doing that to them. So give them the same grace and compassion.
I want to bring in an issue that happened. I'm an elected official in my community, and that just that brings in like my passion for community service, public health, that kind of thing. And so I am the only African American on our seat of 5. It's 5 of us that make the rules for our community and help to enforce them. And so we have a camera system, surveillance system, and there were some teenagers, they had done some damage to our bathrooms. And Black teen and a white teen, right? Someone, I guess somebody knew who they were. But the Black juvenile was sent to the sheriff's office. The sheriff came and arrested him. He went through the penal system. He had to go to court. He had to do some time, you know, just got introduced to our juvenile justice system. The white young man was able to come before us, had a hearing. We gave him a fine, that kind of thing. I was incensed. I was like, why did this happen to this? And the thing happened with the African-American young man before the board, we even knew about it. That had kind of taken on a life of its own. But then we were notified that the Caucasian young man was going to come in and have the hearing. And I felt like I was so upset because one, it was the same thing, you know, different outcomes. And I know that it was race involved, you know, and our attorney she said, well, what can we do? Can we go? Can we talk to whomever it was to see if they could offer him that same grace? So she was going to call whomever it was, the sheriff's department and whatnot, to see. What had happened was, because it had started, they weren't able to repeal that or whatnot. But they told us that because he's a juvenile, it's not going to go on his permanent record. But that's an example of how I tried to advocate for him. But it's just, we live in a predominantly white neighborhood. They consider a lot of us threats and that kind of thing. And that happened. And so that's why I feel like we need more representation on the board. The people in our amenity center, that should have never happened. I was so upset. I'm like, how did this happen to this young man and this happened to that young man? And the only difference is their race. And so I was not able to change the outcome, but I'm hopeful that I was able to bring some awareness to some of the people that were there. So in the future, if something like that happens again, they would give that same person of color that same opportunity to not have a juvenile record. So it was just very upsetting. And I came home and I told my girls about it too. We have two little girls, but I was just like, you're going to be treated different. That's just the way that it is, Yeah.
Right. I was going to ask about that too, because of, you're raising, Dr. Darko, Dr. Holsey, and Dr. Kiki are all mommies of beautiful brown babies. And Dr. Kiki and Dr. Darko have he has a son, and Dr. Darko has two boys. And so, yeah, that's another, conversation piece, right? Where whether you're advocating for your patients, advocating for a friend, or advocating for a relative, you may be in a situation where you have to advocate for all of the above. And when it's that close to home, it's one thing to, like Dr. Byrd going to, file a report, but then when it's whether in the community or with your children, that's, I imagine a very challenging conversation to have, especially in the climate, that, just kind of the heightened, things that's happened recently. And maybe even having friends of the family that are not Black come to you and say something like, oh man, I saw that on the news. That was terrible. Oh, I had someone at work come to me and I remember, after the George Floyd thing, they were just like, oh, we noticed you're not as like chipper and heavy, like, is everything wrong? Are you okay? And I said, I won't be okay until people that look like me get treated more fairly. A conversation that needs to be had with relatives and with Dr. Darko, where like, how do you either have a conversation with your son and what sons, and what situations have you been in, whether professionally or otherwise, where you had to be, whether in the position of advocacy or where you had to yourself be like, let me just step in?
So with my sons, they're small. They're still toddlers. So that conversation hasn't necessarily happened just yet. We'll see where we go with that conversation. Again, because of my own upbringing, I know a conversation the way that my parents had the conversation with me. So we will see if I can replicate that. I don't know, because while my experience in my own home, is a lot different, I think, from just kind of the other experiences that we've talked about here. My experience out in society, is different from my parents, right? So we'll see if I can replicate that when the time comes. As far as professionally, I've definitely encountered where I've had to step in and say something, and do something for patients. I remember there was, Lord, this still gets me. There was a patient who was signed out to me from the night team. I came in that morning. I was in residency at the time, and we were signed out a woman who, she had a large body mass index, an increased body mass index, but she came in for pelvic pain overnight. The night team went to do an exam on her, a pelvic exam, and admittedly could not fully see everything that they needed to see in terms of her cervix. They did a manual exam, right? So that was on the speculum exam. They did a manual exam and admittedly said, yeah, her cervix feels, a little large. But they think she's drug seeking because I guess, the states have like their different systems where you can check where people went and what narcotics they got and things like that. They think that she's drug seeking because she went to this hospital, then she went to that hospital, and she went to the other hospital. So they think that she's drug seeking. So, most people were stuck on, well, why'd she go to so many different hospitals? Me, I was stuck on why you couldn't see everything on her exam and why you said her cervix is large. That's what I was stuck on, right? Like all that other stuff. I'm like, listen, if she's drug seeking, that's actually not the problem, right? This woman is coming in and you've identified something that is abnormal in her exam, but you stuck on she's going to all these different places. Now, I go and I see the woman. They had actually admitted her and given her like literally a whiff of pain medication. Like it wouldn't even, like, if you're not in pain, you would probably just be like, oh, I didn't get anything. That's how much of a whiff of medication that they gave her for her pain. So I go onto the floor to see this patient, and she's literally at the edge of her bed, tapping her foot and just like looking like she's in pain. She can't see me. I can see her. And I'm like, this woman is in pain. She's in this room by herself, like just like literally like shaking out of the pain. I go in, talk with her. She tells me her story, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds abnormal. So I go, I order more pain medication for her. I go back to my senior, and I'm like, we need to take this woman for an exam under anesthesia because her exam is abnormal. Like, we need to see what's going on. This woman was dead 8 months later from cervical cancer.
Oh,
8
no.
months. Yeah. But she was drug seeking. Dead 8 months later
Gosh.
from cervical cancer. I'll never forget that patient. Actually, she's the first patient I pronounced, and for me, I just felt like, she went to so many different hospitals, right? She went to so many different hospitals seeking help, but no, she was drug seeking, quote unquote. No, she was seeking help. And if help is a drug, then that's what you needed to give her.
Yeah, I think just being obese or having either side, whether you're extremely skinny or you are obese, you get prejudices on each side. Cancer can be extremely difficult to diagnose in someone who is obese because of the biases and sometimes the limitation you can have on physical exam and needing to change the way you would normally examine someone because of a large habitus. So I think in just obesity in itself or extreme thinness in itself makes diagnosing challenging because of the biases.
Yeah, I agree. Trying to overcome that yourself, like the biases that you come with being whatever you bring in, is a huge challenge. I think in today's, episode, we've talked about a lot of different challenges, right? And we've talked about how each of you ladies have overcome them. I want to kind of shift the energy a little bit and talk about what you're proudest. What have throughout your journey, what are you most proud of? Let's talk to Dr. Holsey.
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Let me think. I think so. One, I just wanted to say I am very fortunate in that I've worked primarily in organizations that are led and filled with other African Americans. So African American led organizations like the National Medical Association, and now I'm doing some work with the African American Wellness Project. So. And then Halo for Families, my organization, but like Dr. Kiki was saying, I'm like everything. So I have to combine with like mission organizations to do great work. But I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I'm also a book author. And when so I'm married to someone in the Navy. And when my oldest, who is now 13, was an infant, my husband was about to take his first deployment. And he was very concerned about Savannah, we call her Savvie, not remembering him. And so I was able to use my health and wellness knowledge, some psychology knowledge and background to develop a book. And that really touched on the vulnerabilities of men, separation anxiety, things like that, the family face and the male faces. And so I wrote a book called Savvie Sunshine, Will You Remember Daddy When I'm Out to Sea? A book for all Navy dads. And it just talked about ways that the mom and the mother would make sure dad was remembered. Dad is important. Dad is integral to the family unit. And I was able to also have a book series. So there's one with the Black family, one with the white family, and then one with the Latino family. And so that was really, I'm very proud because, again, like I said, being intrinsically motivated, taking that time. At the time, I had some time. So I was able to do that and was just very proud of that accomplishment. Yeah.
Love that. Come on, book writer. Yes, authors.
Love it. That's
Like at least two
beautiful.
authors in the panel. Yes.
That is wonderful. I love that. I love that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially for a Black family. That is beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Kiki.
All right, since I'm on mute, right?
No.
I would say my biggest accomplishment would be where I am now. Me being an entrepreneur and I guess a mom. Because I attribute my son to saving my life. Honestly, it's not one of those things where I don't tell him that. Like he doesn't own anything. I always try to remind him happiness comes from within. Don't build your life around mommy because he sticks to me like glue. And I try to do that balance because when you talk about mama's boy, it's not even me. It's a one-sided thing, like that's all him. But a little bit about my backstory. I got hit by a car 2 days before I started medical school. So I was transported to the hospital, started with a sling on my arm, but never got the care. I started that Monday, got hit Friday. And I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I had so much, and that the institutions knew about it, right? But no one offered any type of solution. First in my family to be a doctor, Black, female, Jamaican, all of the things. And I was just like, I could do it. No, I couldn't, right? 6 years in, so I did 2 years of my family medicine residency, and it all came crumbling down. Like I failed board step 3, and they did a psychoanalysis on me, and they're just like, in clinic, you are on it. We ask you a question, you got it. Patients love you, staff love you, associate staff love you. Like I'm the one that's always gathering people in the hallways and like talking. I don't care who you are. If you're the maid, I am dealing with you because I feel you have something of value to offer. And I was good with social skills, but on tests, I was failing. And so they did a psychoanalysis on me, and they found out like I pretty much had trauma, like they see with veterans coming in from war, and they're shocked that I'm even surviving till this day. And I'm able to function, and I'm still in residency. And still, my school was just like, you can take the boards and continue, or you can take a break, but we don't know what that entails. And so I'm just like, you don't give me those odds. And I'm like, I could do it. I took boards again and failed. So I had to leave residency in my second year. So now I don't have a job. And I'm like, all right, I got this. I could go do some research or something. Nope. 3 months into my pregnancy, I found that I was pregnant. So now I'm jobless, homeless, hopeless, and just like done. There is nothing you could tell me. I gave up. And then I had to sit there and say, if not for me, for my child, I have to smile, and it can't be fake, because I was depressed the whole time. Like I had an indentation on my couch. I barely slept on my bed. I didn't care about much. I wouldn't go out much. And people would say, Kiki, where are you? Somebody like, you're not cooking. Are you okay? Because if I'm not cooking, they're just like, you're down. They would invite me out, and I'm just like, no, I'm good. And, people would just say, we saw the signs, but we just didn't know because you were always smiling. And the depression, I was diagnosed with depression, severe depression, PTSD, anxiety, and ADHD, all trauma induced. And with all of that, it came a lot of rebuilding. I tell people, before you break, make sure you find a way to figure out what's breaking you. Because I felt like I was a baby raising a baby. I literally had to learn how to think, I had a C-section, so I was literally learning how to walk too. How to walk, how to poop, how to like talk, how to do a lot of things. But then emotionally and mentally, I was learning, relearning, and unlearning certain things that, you know, I had succumbed to in those 10 years of not getting the care. And then now I'm in a whole new state because I went to school in Maryland. Now I'm in Jersey, and I was weeks pregnant, so I'm fighting for care. I had to go on Medicaid. I had to go on government assistance, and that's a whole thing. Everywhere I went, they were just like, you're unique. We've never seen somebody like you. I went into the system. They were just like, a doctor coming to us on Medicaid. I was like, I'm coming from a state. I don't have insurance. Who's going to hire me? I need something for my child. I need to deliver with care. So that was unique. You know, I was going through so many things, and there was nothing to navigate, no one to help me. I reached out to the residency. They weren't giving me anything. And I was just in a downward spiral. But within, intrinsically, I said, keep the hope, keep faith, your son. You know, people gave me stuff like my son. I didn't want him angry. I didn't want him depressed. I didn't want him sad. I didn't want him feeling defeated. I was like, you're going to come out. You're Black. You're good. From the day I found out I was pregnant, I was like, for the rest of my life, I'm fighting for you, and you're going to be fighting. I can't have your mental health be an issue that you have to fight for. So I went through that, and then a year, I got to spend a year with him, and then I was just like, I need to work. Who's going to hire me? I don't have my license, and I'm overqualified for most things, but underqualified for the one profession that I've worked so hard for. And so I had to start from scratch. I had to become like a volunteer at an office, and then she treated me like an intern, and then, you know, go through all of that stuff, even though I had 2 years under my belt. But eventually I ran her office after a while, right? Like, she was just like, oh, it's not your skills. It was just the accident. I was like, yes, this is what I've been saying for the longest. And I got back in medicine, but I was so unhappy. I was just like, I'm tired of running patients like room for rent. Like, I gotta go room to room, can barely spend time with them. I'm spending more time in managing their drugs and everything than treating them, because this family med, she run her own practice. And it's hard when you're by yourself to do the care that you really want for the patients. So I'm like, I'm so unhappy. So I said, I need to do more. And I'm like you, Dr. Holsey, I'm like, how am I going to forge my own path? I got all, you know, something inside me. I started waking up. I was like, this was 3 years in my son's life. I was like, I did 3 years for him. Now I got to focus on me. Who am I? What do I want? What do I think, I believe, I desire? And then I started thinking, and I was just saying, not this. I don't want clinical medicine anymore. I want to take my boards to pass, because it wasn't me taking this exam. I was in an altered frame of mind. So I do want to take it and pass. But I don't want to do clinical medicine. That's not where my heart is, at least not the way medicine is done today. And so if there's a way where I can forge my own path in that, I'll get back to it. But what can I do for my physicians and my clinicians? And that's when my business came up. So I'm focusing on physician mental health. So I'm creating a business in which that's literally what we focus on. I have a podcast. I did the first ever Physician Suicide Awareness Summit. And now I'm looking to go into the hospitals and say, look, what do you have? I get you have a chief wellness officer, but what are the standards they're going by? What else do you offer? What are the things that you're doing? Is it a Band-Aid? Is it a solution? What are we doing? And, you know, I'm reaching out to people, I'm partnering, and I'm learning to do stuff. I mean, we're getting to the point where I do need an income to supplement this income, because entrepreneurship for Black women is rough. So I am getting back into the role of looking for work. But I am at a place where I can say I feel good again, right? Like, I'm smiling, and it's a real smile. Like, I'm happy. I am motivated. I am getting the care that I need. I am, you know, just doing things that I once gave up on, and working to not say, if I can do it, you can do it too, but I want you to do it better than me. I want you to have access easier than me. I want you to know how to get it. I want you to know whose door to knock on, whose window to open, you know, what can you do? I want to be that person, and that's what motivates me. I have a purpose, I have passion, and I'm just like in a good space, I can honestly say. So yeah, I guess now.
Yes, good
Thank
space.
you.
Yes, Black woman overcoming. Love it.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Purpose.
Shameless
Yes.
plug. Dr.
Honestly,
Kiki's podcast
moments like
episodes and
this,
all of that is out there.
I am proud too because I see other Black women, right? And we're telling our story, and we all can say we relate. And it's like, I'm not alone, right? For the longest, I felt like I was alone, but then I have moments like this and I'm not. And it's just like, it's not to be like, oh, soapbox. It's just to be like, we did it, we're doing it, and we're gonna
We
continue
did
to
it,
do it.
Joe.
So it's joy in my heart to have these moments, because 5 years ago, you wouldn't see me here. I would still be stuck just suffering in silence. But now, you know, I have platform with other beautiful women that I can learn from and you know, enjoy life with. So yeah, that's also something I'm happy for.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
we all proud of you, Dr. Kiki.
Thank
Hey.
Thank you.
Right? With the cartoon hands. Yes. You better inspire today. Catch the episode with Dr. Kiki for more details.
Right?
Dr. Darko.
First, let me say that, Dr. Holsey, Dr. Kiki, those are beautiful stories. Thank you so much for sharing that. That definitely touched my heart. So I know anybody else listening to this is just going to really, really be inspired and just touched by what you both shared. For me, I think, and I kind of said this on our podcast episode, Dr. Joseph, but I think the thing that I actually, at least to date, am most proud of is actually picking the person that I married. My husband, he's a trauma surgeon. That's not actually why I'm proud, not because he's a trauma surgeon, but
It's a good accomplishment.
It's an accomplishment. But even if you weren't a trauma surgeon, I'm actually proud that I married him because, and again, I mentioned this on the podcast because I think that, if you decide to partner up with someone, right? If you decide to marry someone or, decide to again, partner up with a person, that person really can impact your life.
Mm-hmm.
You are literally bringing someone in and saying, hey, I want to live my life with you. And you have to do that together. And that's a very hard thing to do. And sometimes, we're good at picking the person. And sometimes, whatever that decision was not necessarily the best decision. And I have to say that, I think for me, that was a really good decision because it has led to so many other things in my life. It's led to me feeling like I don't just have my family, but I have his family. Like our families are very much like we both see our families as ours. So his nieces and nephews, oftentimes you'll say, you'll hear me say my niece, or you'll hear him say my nephew. You won't even know that actually he's talking about my nephew, or actually I'm talking about his niece. You won't know that. His parents, right? Like I see his parents and he sees my parents as like they're just our parents, so we really just have a very full kind of family dynamic. And I really appreciate that, feeling like I have the support of my nuclear family that I came from, but I actually have also the support of this new family that I'm a part of. It's really been a great thing to have a father for my sons who I feel is a absolutely fabulous father. And that's why, Dr. Holsey, when you said what you said, I was just like, wow, like that is honestly, if my husband were in the military, that would be something that he would say. He'd be like, I'd be so afraid, that my son would forget me, or that my, in your case, your daughter, that, he really wants to feel that connection with his children. And that's so very important to him, to have that connection with his children, that, he's helping me to, to basically raise them in a family where they feel safe, they feel secure. They don't feel like, they gotta, they have to be this thing, oh, you got man up. It's like, dude, he's 4, like, let him be 4, you know what I mean? Like my kids don't have that pressure, from my husband, because he appreciates the innocence of childhood, and he wants them to experience that, but he also wants to experience their childhood. That's important to him as well, and then just building this, I guess, enterprise, if you will, because we're both entrepreneurs, and we both, he has a podcast for his business. I have a business with, working with pre-meds, and then we have a business working together. And actually all of our businesses, we're working together, but we have another business, which is a locums business for doctors. But, we just have this idea of how we dream together, that whatever it is that we create in this life is going to be good because we're both a part of it. And so for me, I think that is the best decision that I've made to date, because that will impact the rest of my life going forward in so many different ways. And so, yeah, I got to say that, but don't let him listen to this.
Okay. All right. I'll let him.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is
You
beautiful.
That's 2 episodes I'm going to have to make him not listen to, Dr. A. I don't
right.
know how to
Yeah.
keep that away.
Black magic love.
Dr.
Love
Byrd.
it.
I know, right? All that mushy stuff. See, you are mushy.
I don't get mushy.
I couldn't tell.
Dr. Byrd.
So I think I'm most proud. Okay, I have a lot of things to be proud of, but I'm most proud of my journey in medicine and where I am. So I'll just start from the beginning. So in 2005, I was at Savvie University, Louisiana. And if you remember, in fall 2005, that's when Hurricane Katrina hit and really devastated New Orleans. So I was there for the hurricane and had to be evacuated like many Xavierites. And I ultimately spent the semester at Wayne State University. I was a pre-med biology major, but I hated that major. I'm not gonna lie. And I decided to take a microbiology class. And that class literally changed the direction of my life, because I never knew much about microbiology. Like, I just was like, oh, you can either, be a clinical microbiologist, or you can study infections that staph causes and stuff like that. I was like, I did extremely well in this class because people were like, oh yeah, this is a weed out class. And that's what kind of led me to go into infectious diseases. I was like, what is this field? Like, I don't really see many people who look like me in it, but I think I'm interested. In that moment, it taught me that, I wasn't the smartest. I mean, I'm smart, but I wasn't like the top of the class. I wasn't like one of those people who just loved everything about school. But it taught me that, I'm going to be successful in whatever I'm passionate about. So I was like, okay, well, I'll be an infectious disease doctor. But at the end of undergrad, I struggled with depression too, like Dr. Kiki. And so I didn't apply early enough. I didn't get in. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be a doctor. But one of my professors said, hey, why don't you go into public health? Like, you never know. You might do medicine, but why don't you apply to the School of Public Health? So I got into one school, that was George Washington University. I really loved the program. I was inspired. Okay, well, public health is actually pretty good, especially if I can be an infectious disease epidemiologist. That's what I was thinking. So I ended up applying to medical school. I did get in, and I feel that I have always traveled this path that was untraditional. At my med school, most people didn't want to do combined residency. So I ultimately went into internal medicine pediatrics, which my school didn't have that program. So many people tried to talk me out of going there. I went to residency and they're like, okay, so what do you want to do? I told them I want to do combined adult and pediatric infectious disease fellowship. And so they honestly said, I don't even know how you would apply to that. I don't know anybody who's actually done that. So good luck. That's what I was told.
All
and
right.
I was like, okay, I found, one or two people who had some insight. They were like, well, I don't know how to do it, but talk to this person, they've done it. And so I ultimately, ended up at Brown doing combined adult and pediatric infectious disease fellowship. And I will be done with fellowship in 5 months. And so I'm like really proud because number one, is not that many people who be like, so I'll be quadruple board certified. So internal medicine, pediatrics, adult infectious diseases, and pediatric infectious diseases. So it's not many people who like go that route. Like almost all the people I went to med school are done with training. So I'm like one of the last ones that is still in training. But I think that representation matters, especially, and I think the COVID-19 pandemic really kind of illustrated that it was so important that knowledgeable people, infectious disease experts, and people of color really kind of step up to not only advocate for our community, but to come from a knowledge base and really provide even public health guidance, even saying, oh, okay, you're trying to increase vaccine rates in, communities of color. How do you do that? How do you network? So just like Dr. Holsey, how do you integrate your public health recommendations into the community? Are your recommendations congruent to what the community wants? And so all of these things are important, and it's really led my decision to try to apply for a job at the CDC, and that's my next step. So I'm just really proud because so many people have told me, why are you doing this? This is dumb. Like I've had attendings, like people say, this is dumb. Why are you doing this? I feel like you're wasting your time. But at the end of the day, I'm so proud to have accomplished the goals, my personal goals. And hopefully, I hope that you are looking at one of the future directors of the CDC, because that's my next goal.
Woohoo! Yes, we appreciate that. Yes, director of CDC.
Dr. Byrd,
they're gonna play that.
Dr. Byrd, we need you in the internal medicine section at the NMA.
Yes.
Oh yes, we definitely can touch base.
Yes. Okay.
Because I think it's Dr. Kane who does the over infectious diseases.
It is.
Yeah. Now that I'm board certified, maybe she'll let me do something, No, I love Dr. Kane. She's so sweet.
Yes.
But see, this is a classic example of, what does somebody else's opinion got to do with me? Right? You decided this is what you wanted to do. Meanwhile, people are trying to put their own their own thoughts about what you want to do with your life and talking about that's dumb, you wasting your time. It's like, no, you wasting your time telling me I'm wasting my time. You go waste your time somewhere else.
Right. Have a seat.
It's funny because like in the moment and in the process, people are like, oh my goodness, you're wasting your time. But now that I'm at the end of the process, they're like, oh wow, I'm so happy you're in this space. I'm so happy that you did this. Not many people do this, but we need somebody like you. So now I'm like attractive and people are like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Whereas like this energy was not there 5 years ago.
Right. And then it's another thing when no one in your program has ever done it, or like, previous seniors have never, when I did my program, only one senior in the entire, I think residency had ever went into allergy. So when I did allergy, I had to apply to go to other hospitals to do rotations because the immunology part was just not there in my hospital. And then the only allergist that could write me a letter of recommendation was like, okay, so what are your backup plans specialty wise? Because it's really hard to get into allergy. And then I got in outside the match. And so I was like, so I'll be going into the allergy fellowship, sips on tea.
We can talk a lot about that, because when it comes to fellowship, I feel like sometimes there's a lot of bad advice given.
That's true.
And that, oh yeah, it's so competitive. And sometimes these are people who aren't intimately involved in the application process or who hasn't done a fellowship program, or, we could just talk all about that. But, at the end of the day, I think that it's okay to forge your own path. As all of our panelists have said, I think that you have to figure out what what is my purpose in life? That's how I like what I believe in God. So God, what purpose do you have for me? And I feel like he wouldn't give us these desires to want to reach out to community, to want to do infectious diseases, to care about maternal child health, to really care about mental health, if this isn't what we are supposed to be doing in this life. And I think that when you're operating in your purpose, then, you aren't going to get as burnt out. You aren't going to get as distracted, and it'll just be easier. That doesn't mean that you don't have overcommitments or mental health issues, or you'll never have any trials or tribulations or setbacks. But I think setbacks and failures are necessary because you learn so much. Like, it's not the successes you learn from. It's the fact, okay, you didn't get into medical school, or you failed that exam, or you had to drop out of residency, or that first business failed, or you applied to something and you didn't get the scholarship, the grant, the funding, your whatever. You learn lessons in those moments. And I thank God for all of my failures, because it was in those failures that helped me help propel me to the next level and taught me so many lessons. And I think sometimes people are afraid to try things and do things and go out on faith, like people say, because you don't want to fail. But the failure is so important. There's not one successful person in this life that has never failed. That doesn't exist.
I love that.
One of my mottos is aim to fail and aim to
that's
be
right.
perfect. Because honestly, perfection, you won't even try. Because if you're trying to be perfect, you're going to sit there and succumb to the anxiety, to the stress, to everything that's around you that you won't even try. But in failure, you'll be able to learn. You'll be able to pick yourself back up. You'll be able to teach somebody else. You'll be able to do much more than you were able to do. And I think a lot of times people come from a space of depression, or like they're unsatisfied with their own lives. So they give advice based on that. And a lot of times it's like, hurt people. And it's okay to say the pros and the cons. Like, it's okay to tell somebody, girl, if you go into this is going to be the bad side. Mm-hmm. But it's not my place to tell you where you're going to end up, or tell you how you're going to end up, or tell you who you're going to be, what you're going to do in life. That's not my place. And we need to draw the line with that. And I agree. What energy or what amount of passion do you have in your life to break people down and feel like it's okay to dictate to people what they can and cannot do? Like, who does that? It's you're not my mama, you're not my daddy, and even still, they don't even do that. So why would you?
A lot of kind of advice and maybe misconceptions. So what do you wish more people knew, or just people knew or realized in general about Black women in healthcare? Anyone can start. And then you can also give like one piece of advice for someone who wants to be in your particular position as well.
I want to say this. I think Black women in healthcare, I think that people assume that we're strong and that we are okay, right? And I see that in families as well. I mean, because really, Black women, we kind of hold it down. We keep it together. We keep it going. We keep it moving. But sometimes I think people need to know that we want to be asked, is everything okay? What do you need? Are you good? Are you okay? Because I think sometimes those symptoms, issues might go unnoticed because we do so well. And I could just speak for me. I'll talk about me. I am high energy. I do like to accomplish a lot. I am able to multitask, but sometimes I need help. And I would appreciate being asked, hey, Chanda, hey, I'm called Nicole, Dr. Holsey, whatever. You're okay? How can I help you? What can I do for you? Because I'm always doing for others, but we need someone to kind of help breathe into us as well. And so I think that that's something that people should recognize and adhere to. Sometimes it's a little challenging, and we need our support as well.
Okay. You're going to say, Dr. Darko?
Yeah, no, I love that. And kind of to piggyback actually off that, and a couple of other things I think Dr. Byrd also mentioned, is we, I think, are often looked at, I think anyway, as, especially when you've reached the top, that, okay, you were just destined to be there and you didn't really have much in terms of hoops to jump. Even though people kind of know like the backstory of Black women in general, for some reason, when you get to a certain level of education or a certain level of success, people are often shocked to hear, yeah, I failed. Yeah, I was discouraged. Yeah, I was. And it's like, I would like for people to kind of understand that we are not necessarily anomalies in that sense, that we didn't, the path wasn't just paved for us. And then we were just so smart and we never failed anything. And, we did everything perfectly and we had no setbacks. And I'm like, the things that are societal ills, the things that are individual failures, we go through them too. So don't be so surprised when Dr. Renee is talking to, a room full of pre-meds talking about, yeah, I had a 1.9 GPA in college. Like that happened, like don't be so surprised, because yeah, I had a setback too. Don't be so surprised when I say my pre-med advisor told me you should just go to grad school and do something else. Yeah, that happened. Don't be surprised when Dr. Renee says, yeah, it took me 5 years to graduate from college. That happened. It took me another 4 years before I ever got into medical school. I bombed the MCAT the first time that I took it. I actually failed my residency, or not residency. I failed my first board certification exam. Like those things happened. You know what I mean? It's like, it didn't just come easy. Just because you see the after, don't assume that the before was a smooth path. It wasn't. I was clueless, throughout some of this journey. So, understand that it took a lot to get here, and that just because you are on a journey and you have no clue what you're doing, you have no clue how to get there, don't assume that you eventually won't have the same after as me. And that people will also look at you as, oh, you just got here so easily, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So normalize being abnormal, if you will.
And then I forgot. And then Dr. Darko, one big piece of advice. Sounds like that was the big piece of advice for anyone that wants to be, hey, like I really like that Dr. Darko. I really like that Dr. Holsey. I want to be where she is. What one big piece of advice? It sounds like that was what you were like. Listen, don't assume you ain't gonna get the bumps in the road like I did. Right. And also, it seems like the misconception is there wasn't bumps in my road when I was trying to get to where I was.
Correct. Yes. Use those bumps, because you might get one big bump, but that big bump may take you to, you have no clue what height it will take you to. Absolutely.
That's right.
So, normalize the abnormal path.
You can't climb a smooth mountain.
Correct.
And then Dr. Holsey, I wanted that piece of advice.
Yeah, my thing, I'm a big person. I'm a big believer in asking for help. I mean, you guys could probably tell that. Ask for help. Generally a lot of people that I know, they want to see you do well. They want you to thrive. At least those are the kind of people that I surround myself around. That's the energy that I give off. Those are the kind of people that are in my circle. And if you need some help, if you're at a bump in the road, if you're trying to find your way through, reach out. I think that there are people willing and able to help you. So that's my advice.
Love it. Dr. Byrd, when you wish people knew more about Black women in healthcare, and one big piece of advice, someone's like, I want to be a quadruple boarded infectious disease about to work at the, CDC. Hello.
So I think that in addition to what I mentioned regarding failure is necessary, is that we're all human. And I think that, when you're seriously pursuing your field, I think sometimes there may be a tendency to put family on the back burner, put friends on the back burner. And it's like, you're going to need that emotional, that family support. So you just have to be strategic in how you use them as a support. When you're in medical school or you're trying to study for the MCAT, you can't hang out with your friends all the time, and really explaining to people, hey, in this short time, I need to focus. But as soon as I'm done, we can hang out and do those things. I say, don't lose friendships. Well, some friendships may need to, as you grow, everybody can't come with you. Okay, so you have to be, if they're not on the same wavelength and if they are doing things to obstruct what you're trying to do with your life, you just have to, leave them by the wayside. But knowing that, my parents, for example, my parents are really important. Connecting with family is really important, because like, people get so focused on their career. Oh, I made it here. I made it here. I made it here. And then you don't have people to celebrate with you. Or in the dark times, you're alone. You don't have anybody because you lost those connections. The other, so I think, especially as Black women, especially, women in medicine, women in our healthcare fields, we just need more support than our other, majority colleagues, because we just have microaggressions and we just have barriers that they don't have to overcome. My other last piece, and this is for anyone that's pursuing medicine, pursuing medicine is expensive. I think that nobody really explained to me the financial piece that goes to even applying to medical school. So, things that you may want to be aware of, like I was fortunate, I don't come from a rich family. However, I come from a family that does take care of the little money that they have. So I just gave them advance notice when I would be asking for a few $1,000s. So if you want to, for example, some people need a MCAT prep course, whether it's Princeton Review or Kaplan. So that's going to cost maybe like $1,500, maybe $3,000. To actually apply to medical school, definitely don't recommend applying to one or two. You need to have like probably 10 to 20 on your list, maybe more depending on how strong of an applicant you are. You definitely want to apply early, but so you send in your primary application. I can't remember how much it costs, but it's per school.
Lots of money. And
then you have to pay for secondary applications. So I think when I was applying, the most expensive one was $125. But just imagine if you're paying $100 or even $50 for 20 schools, like you have to have money for that. I feel that the people applying to, people who are applying to residency and medical school had it good this year because most of the interviews were virtual. And so you think, oh, okay, well, I don't have an opportunity to go to visit the school. Yes, that's true. But it's expensive. You have to pay for flight. You have to pay for transportation. You have to pay for your hotel. They don't compensate for, like, you don't get reimbursed for this. So for residency, so I said I spent $3,000 to $5,000 applying to medical school. You get your loans. I spent like $5,000 applying to residency. And then on the back end, I spent another $5,000 applying to fellowship. That doesn't include, your step 1, step 2. That doesn't include the books you'll need in medical school. Each of the board exams, Keys boards is like 25. So I can't remember. $100. Medicine was $1,700. Your subspecialty boards is like $2,700.
But every of those B words you just mentioned, there are prep courses for all those B words.
Yes, so you have to take prep courses, and then like the last thing I'll talk about in regards to money is you don't get paid to be a doctor until you get those letters behind your name, MD-DO, and then you're getting paid as a resident doctor. So we're talking 50,000. So people say, they'll like, oh yeah, you know, you're a doctor now, da 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 da. You have to let family members know, I'm not balling out of control. I'm only making 50,000. 55,000. You probably make more money than me. I remember I had a patient that had the nerve to say, yeah, you probably make money. I'm like, sir, I'm pretty sure you were making more money than me. And I'm working 100 hours, you know, so it's not a lot of money when you're in the training phase. So you don't break $100,000. I'm in PGY 8, that's postgraduate year 8. You're not making 6 figures while you're in training. And so when it comes to money, sometimes people are like, look, I spent all this money, I spent all this time. When I get my little residency check, or when I get my little first attending check, let me ball out. And I'm like, no, the devil is a liar. Do not do that. Like, really take care of your finances, take care of your money. If you have problems managing your finances, please get a financial planner. I was that person that really struggled. When I got a financial planner to really help me, teach me, lead me, I'm just in a much better place. You have peace. And so I just want to, that's the dark side of medicine, that when people, oh, you know, I want to be a doctor, we don't really talk about how much it costs. And I think that's prohibitive for people, especially people of color, when you're talking about a population that's not as wealthy as our white counterparts. And so this is like a barrier too. That doesn't mean don't take out loans, or you take out whatever money you need to do to get you to the next level. But that financial piece is what I think people should be aware of. And I don't say that to be a detriment or to deter people. I'm just trying to give you a heads up in terms of, like, we really want to make sure that we're not going into our first attending job with $100,000 in credit card debt, things like that.
And actually, shameless plug, if you would like a little bit of some financial advice, someone I know by the name of Dr. Renee Darko happens to have a Keeping Up with the Darkos blog with her husband and how they became debt free. You can check it out as well, so you can get some motivation. Shameless plug. Dr. Kiki. So we'll talk about you're welcome, Dr. Renee. She does all the things. All the things. We're gonna plug you in. Motivate your babies with the book. The house of Dr. Holsey has a book. Listen, these girls are on fire. They're doing things. We'll plug in their social media a little bit at the end too. I know all of y'all, so I'll plug it in at the end. Dr. Sharice, go ahead, take us out. Yes, talk about, one big thing that you feel like a lot of people don't know or don't realize about Black women in healthcare, and in general, one big piece of advice that you would give a young Black woman that's like, I'm really, vibing with Dr. Kiki. I like what she's doing. I'd like to be where she is.
Okay, so one thing I would say is, what we don't know, what people don't know about us, is the business of medicine and how we contribute to business and medicine, but we don't get the credit nor the pay for it. Like someone said earlier, we're expected to do these little things and not get credited or paid for. But at the end of the day, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes and managing and operations. And a lot of times that's Black women in the back. And we don't necessarily push ourselves forward because, one, we weren't taught to, and two, we don't necessarily know how to. So we just got to do a better job at understanding it. A lot of people don't realize doctors aren't taught the business of medicine, and it's a lot of business in medicine.
Right.
It's a lot. And now I'm on the business end, and they say, oh, you're a doctor. And I'm just like, it is like, well, doctors make the worst business people. I'm like, okay, thank you. But that's not gonna be me. So it's definitely, important to take time to understand that, like the finances. We're not taught finances in medicine, like Dr. Byrd said. We're not taught how expensive it is. We're not taught the importance of a credit card before, getting into medical school, or certain things. Like money management is not necessarily what a lot of Black communities, are the average house knows. because they're barely scraping by and they're trying to thrive and survive. That talking about, you know, investing or even having a bank account is like, I have a bank account to rob Peter to pay Paul, not
Right.
necessarily to invest. And it's understanding that. It's not saying all of us, but a good amount of us where I can't say my parents had it. They're immigrants to this country, you know, and so they did their best to set us up so that we could survive. And now it's for me to set up the legacy with, you know, financially, the wealth. Like I always say, I don't want to be rich. I want to be wealthy, because wealth is intergenerational. Richness is for today and it's fleeting. So it really is just understanding business and medicine and of medicine. And the advice I would give would be okay in your skin. When you're 100, you're still going to be trying to figure out life. So why at 20? Why in your 30s? Should you know what life is about? And start with your why. If you know why you're doing it, if you know why you want to do it, and you know why you want to end up where you are, you will always get there no matter what. And that means you have to do it for you. You can't say, I'm going because daddy was a doctor or because I want to be rich, because that's a lie. I'm glad that's the person. That's a lie. Because even like pediatricians are just now getting over the hump of 6 figures. You know, like it wasn't like that in the beginning.
If even.
And then you got to specialize, and then, you know, all these other things added to it. So realistically, just be okay in your skin. Be okay being who you are and how you are. People are going to constantly try to change you, constantly try to add to you, but you have to add value to you and yourself. And just be good in knowing that you're going to fail. I was honor student. I came in like top, and I was just like, I got this, and then I got in, and it was just like, oh,
Don't got this.
I don't got this. And then it's just like that first moment where it's just like your soul gets snatched and then you're just like crumbling. You know, it's a lot. So just understanding that you're gonna have trials and tribulations, but that's not what's gonna define you. You will define you. You have to constantly say, this is me. This is who I am, and acknowledge mental health. I'm gonna do my mental health soapbox because that's where I am. Your mental health is important. And in our community, we don't talk about it. We don't necessarily address it. We don't necessarily acknowledge it, or we don't even know how to identify it sometimes. It's okay to say, I don't have it. I don't got it. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I am. I don't know how I am. And seek somebody that's gonna help you answer those questions, or find ways in the information of the era of technology. There's so many ways now that you can get that help. So, you know, just know wherever you are, however you are, there's someone or something out there to help you. And I know it's mad late, so I'm gonna keep it short there because you saw my son coming here, and I know everybody got kids. Well,
So yeah, that's great, Dr. Kiki. That's great. Like advice, like just know your why and be comfortable in your skin. And I think, you know, I want to thank all of you guys for being on here and having this really crucial, necessary conversation that really, you know, yes, you guys are great Black women in healthcare, girls on fire, phenomenal women, doing your thing, if I do say so myself. Love every single one of these ladies. But also just advice that's beneficial to everyone, whether you're a Black woman or not, whether you're a woman or not, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of really advice that they're just kind of life things that would really be, you know, would be helpful for you to help you through life. And I really thank all of our panelists today for being here. I really appreciate you guys. I'll just kind of let everybody know where to follow you because I too am a fan. Yes, I'm a fan of my panelists. Dr. Renee Darko happens to be on 3medstrategies.com. And again, go ahead and cop her book. I got my little Kindle version. How good old Dr. V came to be. She got her little picture on there. She's all blue. Go ahead and get that. Keeping Up with the Darkos, Google it. She'll pop right back up. Do that. And then Dr. Holsey's at haloforfamilies.org. Go ahead and check her out. And your book, Dr. Holsey, you can go ahead and, I don't remember the name of the book that you mentioned.
Savvy Sunshine, Will You Remember Daddy When I'm Out to Sea? A salute to all Navy dads.
Perfect. So go ahead and cop that book. Dr. Byrd is at Dr_KBYRD. That's her Instagram. Also, she has a Twitter. account because she is a Twitterician after all, and doing all things infectious disease. Listen, her TikTok account is definitely way more popping than I could ever be. So if you want to let us know what your Twitter and your
yeah, so you can just find me on www.katrinabyrd.com. It has all my social media handles. But yeah, you can find me on IG. I'm probably the most popping on there is at DR_KBYRD.
Perfect. And then of course, Dr. Kiki is on mdundertheradar.com. So mdundertheradar.com. And then she's on DOC_U_R on Instagram. Correct, Dr. Kiki?
Yes. But my personal is I_am_Dr. Kiki on Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies, once again. And thank you for those who contributed a little bit to our questions. I really appreciated you guys' authenticity, transparency during this conversation. And I'm sure a lot of people were both empowered, informed, and inspired just by your stories and all of your advice today. So with that, we'll conclude our episode with this beautiful, phenomenal Girl on Fire panel commemorating the Women's History Month and rounding out, of course, Black History Month. Thank you guys for listening, and please remember to listen to the other podcast episodes and also follow everything The Dynamic Doc, thedynamicdoc.com, The Dynamic Doc on IG and on YouTube. And also remember, there's a video version of this. If you're listening to it, there's a video version on the YouTube channel. And please, by all means, above all, make sure to take care of yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy, be blessed. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Peace.
For having us. Bye, ladies.